Hey guys, what's up? My name is Zach, and today we're going to be doing an election prediction between Cory Booker and Candace Owens. So as most of you know, Cory Booker is the Democratic senator from New Jersey. He's been named as a potential contender for the Democratic nomination in 2020. And Candace Owens is a conservative political commentator who works for Turning Point USA, which is a conservative think tank, and she is African American as well. So the reason why I wanted to do this race, or this matchup specifically, is because both of them are African American, which is a matchup we've never seen in American politics on a presidential stage. So that would probably mean there'd be peaked African American turnout overall, not just for one side like we saw with Obama versus McCain, or Obama versus Romney. There'd be peaked African American turnout overall, and whether it would go more so to Booker or more so to Owens, we'll get to that throughout this video. So Candace Owens has been described as far right and alt-right by a number of different journalist groups. Her views are a bit extreme. She has called the Me Too movement stupid and unnecessary. She believes that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton should be imprisoned. She has a number of extreme views, at least from a conservative standpoint. So let's just get right into it. Safe states to start out with. I haven't done an election prediction in a while. It's been a lot of analysis videos up until this point, so hope I still remember which states to do and which not to do. And also just to clarify, this is a matchup that's in 2020, but just ignore the Trump factor. Ignore you didn't get impeached or anything in this alternate scenario. Nothing like that. Just this matchup in 2020 with the current demographic trends in mind and the current political polarization throughout the United States, just without Trump. Just envision that. So a number of things that I'm not going to include in this map are Missouri would not be safe, and Indiana would not be safe. Neither would South Carolina. Neither would that second district in Nebraska. Just neglected to fill that in. And this is because for Missouri and South Carolina at least, there'd be peaked African American turnout, like I said, and like we saw in 2008 and 2012 with Barack Obama. Both these states were competitive, at least to some degree, in both election cycles as a result of the African American turnout. How that would change with Booker and Owens, both African Americans, I'll explain in a second. As for Indiana, that's not safe because, I mean, the only reason it's safe for Trump is because of the Mike Pence factor. If it wasn't for Mike Pence, this state would not be safe for Donald Trump. And there's no Mike Pence factor for Candace Owens, so this state would not be safe, therefore. But Missouri and South Carolina I would both consider safe for Owens, and this is because if there was peaked African American turnout, that would be combined with the conservative base that already exists in both these states. So whatever peaked African American turnout Booker has, which would probably be more so than Owens, it wouldn't make these states competitive. I think it would make it more solidly in Owens' column, if anything. And we're going to see that with states with African American populations as well as we go through the video. So Indiana I consider likely in Owens' column. Despite there not being a Mike Pence factor, this state is pretty solidly in the GOP's column overall, and Owens could appeal pretty well to voters in that state in general. Texas would be likely in Owens' column. African American turnout isn't really too much of a factor in Texas. I mean, it is. It's a factor in every single state. But compared to states like Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, it's not that much of a big factor. And I'd call it in Owens' column as likely, same reason why I would call it in any other Republicans' column as likely. Just because this state's trending more Democratic in general, but it's not likely to go in the Democrats' column just yet. A few more election cycles down. Just want to recap on that in case anyone was wondering if they haven't seen my other videos. New Mexico, likely in Booker's column, just because, I mean, Democratic base, some degree of Hispanic turnout. Same reason why it would be likely in any other Democrats' column. Same with Virginia, likely in Booker's column. You could make the argument that African American turnout could make it more in play for Owens, but I think it just negates itself in this state, and I think that Owens will probably get the larger share of the African American turnout if he were the candidate, so likely in his column. Maine's 2 electoral votes I'd call likely in Booker's column just because he is from the Northeast and he could have good appeal to voters up here. As for the second district, I would call a lean in his column, which I would call to any Democrat if it wasn't for Trump. Trump is really the main reason why this district is going red in general, because he has good appeal to voters in that district in particular. But since he's on the ticket, I'd call it in Booker's column. Trump not being on the Republicans' ticket is going to be a big factor in this election as well, just because of the Trump base that exists throughout the United States, and they may not be inclined to turn out, which is a pretty big factor when you're calling this election. Nebraska's second, I would call it likely in Owens' column. I don't think that Booker has great appeal to voters here, and the only reason why it would be competitive in any other election with Trump on the Republicans' ticket is because Trump does not have good appeal to voters in this district, and that's why it's been so competitive. But Trump's not on the ticket, Candace Owens is, so it would probably go in our column for that reason. As for Arizona, you could make the argument that because Trump isn't on the ticket, this state would go more solidly in the Republicans' column, but I think it's all relative, so I'm going to say lean in Owens' column, just because this state is trending more Democratic, whether you can take Trump into consideration or not. So for that reason, also Owens does have a number of extreme views that could turn off a number of Arizona voters from voting in our column. So for that reason, I'd call it just a lean in our column, nothing solid. I think that Booker does have a chance of taking it. Colorado, I'd call likely in Booker's column as well. African American turnout is kind of a factor here, but not too much. Overall, I consider it likely in any Democrats' column. It's becoming safer and safer for the Democrats as each election cycle goes, as we've started to see. So likely in Booker's column. Minnesota, I'd also call likely in Booker's column, and same with Michigan. And the reasons for both these states is because Trump is really the one major factor that makes these states so unpredictable. Because the thing about the Rust Belt is that there are a number of white working class voters that might be frustrated or are frustrated at the establishment, and that's really the main reason why the Rust Belt, or the majority of the Rust Belt, went to Trump in 2016, was because the majority of the voters in those states were frustrated with the establishment and wanted someone to shake things up. That was Trump's main voter base, which he's championing and is still championing. I don't even know if that's a word, but you guys understand what I mean. But without the Trump factor, and with Candace Owens on the ticket, who I really don't think could appeal very well to that same frustrated white working class voting group in these states, I think that the Democrats could take these states for the same reason why Obama could take them, because that voting group that turned out for Trump in 2016 would not be turning out for Candace Owens, and then you're left with the same majority Democratic base that makes these states safe for Democrats in any other situation. So for that reason, Minnesota and Michigan likely in Booker's column. Hope that's that's sound logic for most of you. North Carolina and Georgia, I'd both consider likely in Candace Owens' column, and this is for another number of reasons. North Carolina, the only reason why it'd be competitive not the only reason, but the main reason why it would be competitive when Trump is on the Republicans' ticket is because he and the Republican Party have passed a number of, not a number of, but mainly the tax bill, which does negatively affect a number of voters in this state, which is the main reason why I made it leaning in the Democrats' column when I was doing election prediction videos months ago. That's still a main factor for Trump in winning this state, and that's still going to negatively affect him in the 2020 election, determining that he is on the ticket. But in this case, he's not on the ticket, and it's just Candace Owens, who I believe would take the majority of the African-American turnout in this state, and I believe would appeal more strongly to Republicans in the state than Trump could, so for that reason to be likely in her column. Georgia, the same reason why I would list it in any other Republicans' column likely, just because it's not ready to go to Democrats just yet. A few more election cycles, and I think it'd be more competitive. And also for the fact that African-American turnout will, of course, be a factor, but Candace Owens will probably take the majority of it, making it likely in her column. Nevada, I consider a lean in Booker's column, and this is because a number of Candace Owens' views, like I said, are extreme. And I'm gonna rescind my call for North Carolina, and I'm gonna call it a lean in her column. And this is because I don't take back what I said. I do believe that she could appeal better to some voting groups than Trump can, but her views are not in any way moderate. You can make the argument that she isn't an extremist, but she isn't a moderate Republican. She is definitely staunchly in favor of a lot of views that are not moderate Republican. She's in favor of many of Trump's ideologies. I'm calling these states in in Booker's column because not because I don't think that she's a Trump Republican, because she's a Trump Republican, but because she isn't Donald Trump. Because I really think the only kind of candidate that can win these states is the kind of populist mentality that Donald Trump has. So Owens would really be campaigning as a candidate with Trump's ideology, but without Trump's populism and without his campaign strategy, which really doesn't work well, I think, for a Republican candidate. So for that reason, it'd be a lean in her column, just because her extreme views would not appeal to the huge moderate Republican base that's in the state. Same with Arizona, and the same goes for Nevada, which really flips it from red to blue. I think that if Owens was more of a moderate candidate, she could win Nevada, and she could maybe win a few more Rust Belt states, but she's not. And for that reason, I'd call Nevada a lean in Booker's column. Moving on, I'd call Pennsylvania. I'd call lean in Booker's column. This is because, for one, I think that actually I'm completely neglecting regionalism. Booker is from the area. He has better appeal to Pennsylvania voters in general, which are trending more Democratic overall. And Owens' extreme views are not going to appeal to moderate Republicans. It could turn out a good handful of Trump Republicans, but not enough to give her a victory the same way that Trump took the victory, which was by turning out his Trump base in 2016, which he won't be able to do. Wisconsin, I'd call a lean in Booker's column, just because I think it's the more Republican state of the Rust Belt, and I'm completely disregarding Trump's approval rating in these states as well, since it doesn't really play a factor too much. And I believe Candace Owens could make a play here if she really wanted to amongst Trump Republicans. It depends which path she wants to go. If she becomes more inclined to be more extreme in this election, or if she goes more towards the middle, it really depends. But overall, I call it a lean in Booker's column. Iowa, I'd also call a lean in Booker's column, and this is because Trump won this state. Not Trump. Obama won this state with pretty decent margins, I believe, at or above 5% in 2008 and 2012, and that was before Trump was on the ticket, obviously. And then when Trump went on the ticket, he was able to turn out that frustrated voter base in Iowa, just like he did with the rest of the Rust Belt. I believe that Iowa is the perfect example of how Trump was able to turn out his voter base to support him, because he flipped that state by 8 points when Obama won it by 5 or so the election cycle before. That will not be as much a factor for Owens, and her extreme views will turn a number of moderate Republicans off, and Cory Booker's views could appeal to a number of Iowa Democrats, and I could easily see him winning this state in an election against Candace Owens. If you have any questions about that, feel free to let them down below. I think I elaborated on that pretty well, but if you would like some more clarity, please leave a question down below. As for Ohio, I'd call a lean in Owens' column, just because... Oh, I forgot to fill in New Hampshire. I'd call that... I'll explain Ohio in a minute. I call New Hampshire likely in Booker's column for the same argument that I called most of Maine in Booker's column, because of regionalism mostly, and the lack of a Trump base turnout. As for Ohio, minority turnout isn't really too much of a factor, so I won't discuss that. But Candace Owens' views, I believe, could turn off a number of Republicans in the state. However, I do believe that she could have some degree of Trump Republican turnout, which will be an advantage in her part. And the state Republicans make up overall will be an advantage for any Republican, not just Candace Owens. So for that reason, I call it a lean in her column. It's one of the more difficult states to call as we're getting closer to the end. And then down to Florida, I would also call that state in Candace Owens' column. Actually, that's what I called before, but when I was running through this by myself. But I'm going to call it instead in Cory Booker's column, and I think it really comes down to Owens' extreme rhetoric, which I think will turn off a lot of moderate Republicans in this state, and she also won't be able to turn out Trump's voter base as well as Trump himself can, obviously. So for that reason, I'd call it a lean in Booker's column. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This was kind of a difficult election prediction to do, considering that it's pretty far off from where we are currently without Trump on the ticket. But I thought it was an interesting video to do, mostly because of the African-American versus African-American turnout factor. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, please leave them down below. This video is also a suggestion. And before I close the video, I just want to say that I do enjoy making these election prediction videos and analysis videos, but I do have pretty strong opinions when it comes to political affairs and the current political climate, and sometimes I do feel inclined to share my views, but I don't think it's appropriate when doing election predictions, since I try to stick to the facts when calling these elections as much as possible. But I would like to start posting more videos where I talk about current political affairs and where I talk about my views in particular. And I don't know how. Just let me know if you guys would like that or not. I'm not too sure how it would play overall, but let me know. It's just something I've been thinking about. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See ya.